And I might have to miss next week, but I'm good for the week after that. Are you good for 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll schedule it in, or maybe I'll grab a stand-in.
Yeah.
Welcome. We're at episode number 8, Before the Train Wreck. How's everybody doing tonight? Thanks for joining us. Another live show, live broadcast, standard format. You guys will hear a little bit of chat at the intro about today's topic, and we'll be taking some people joining us on the Hangouts. I'll be adding call-ins again. Not this week, but the following week. I've got a system check getting updated, so we'll be using the Hangouts tonight like we did last week. It seemed to work pretty good. Welcome back, Sean.
Good to see you, Rich.
Yeah, man. Good to reconnect. 8 episodes. Today's opening topic is violent women. We see some people starting to pile in there, the chat. Make sure you hit the thumbs up if you're just getting the notification now. Let YouTube know that this stuff is worth watching. Just smash that thumbs up button like a toxic feminist smashes back purple hair dye.
Is that what they do?
I don't know. It's always purple or dark red or something along that line. So violent women. I've had some requests on my channel, like sponsored video topics from guys talking about their train wreck, which they want me to unfuck for them, which is very hard to do. It's kind of more of a let me hold up a mirror and show you where you went wrong and maybe help other guys avoid this as well. But I've had stories of like women attacking men physically, throwing knives at them. I remember I dated this one chick once, and she was telling me the story about how she freaked out on her ex-boyfriend, kind of trying to rekindle, and threw a log through the front window of his house. So it's a story that like has popped up more than once in my life, and they always point and sputter at men, saying that men are the violent ones, or the ones that are always on the hook or liable for domestic violence. But what's your experience been in your practice with your clinical work and everything else that you've done when it comes to violent women?
Actually, I think I encounter violent women a little more often than violent men, but it's low-grade violence, and it fits with what the Centers for Disease Control says about violence, which is that, excuse me, this is from a 2010 study, I think, where they went out and they really examined the prevalence of domestic violence, and what they found is that men get severely violent in larger numbers than women. Like, it's no joke when men get violent and it's a bad scene. Women get violent more frequently than men do, but it's of a lower grade. And women also use what they call psychological violence, which I don't really know what that is, but like, I do. It's coercive control stuff. Like, tell me where you are.
Emotional violence?
Yeah, the controlling stuff. You can't have friends, you can't go out, you can't have your life. Your life needs to revolve around her. She's got you on a tether. You're walking around scared all the time just because you're always in trouble. You can't win. And so that stuff women do a lot more frequently than men do, even though men get the bad rap. I want to tell you about this book I found recently, and I'm not going to tell you the name of it just because I don't really want to. I know this person, but this person was talking about how to vet men, essentially. And she has a little section in there about looking for men who've been violent in their past relationships. And she quoted this guy, Neil Jacobson. He died back in '99, but he worked with John Gottman, and they did some domestic violence stuff. And here's the quote from the book I want to tell you. She's quoting him where he says, "Any man that tells you he was a battered husband is lying." So this is what women are supposed to go into the world with. Like, if a man says that he was mistreated, he's a liar. And this is just the canon out there. Like, this is what people believe. But the truth is that men are getting in bad relationships. And if you go to somebody, if you're getting battered and you try to go to the cops, you try to go to somebody, a professional like me, there's a really good chance that they've heard quotes like this from respected figures that aren't going to believe you. And so really the best option for a man is just do not be in that situation.
Yeah, it's a huge red flag. Violent women usually come with some baggage. It's just a real pain in the ass, but they're also incredibly sensual as well in the bedroom too. Like, usually when they're physically violent, they're also very physical in the bedroom, and they really know how to hook a guy. They're like sirens, right? Like, they really know how to like reel him in. It's like, let's get him in, sort of thing. But they're incredibly dangerous, because anytime you get involved with a chick that's got some propensity to violence, throw things at you, stab you, anything like that, whether it's a knife. I mean, I read this article about this woman who stabbed this boyfriend of hers in his leg, and she was a medical student, and she got off very, very easily. She threw a mason jar at him and then stabbed him in the leg. And then there was a converse story in that. I actually did a video on this. It's on my channel. where there was another guy where this woman Me Too'd him basically, and he lost his medical license. So she got off very, very easily, and he got basically, he lost his opportunity to work as a physician. It's the whole believe all women, domestic violence stuff. You definitely want to stay away from any woman that's got violent propensities, because it just does not. I mean, I've never seen a scenario where it ends well for a guy, where a guy's like, well, that was a really good idea. I'm really glad that I wifed up this woman that throws knives at me.
Yeah, and I know it's easy because for me to say guys should just get out of these relationships is a very simple thing for me to say. But I've never seen a case where a guy stayed in a relationship like that, and at some point he didn't say to himself, "God, I wish I'd gotten out sooner."
I want to talk about your APA video that you just released, but before we do, I just want to link the join link for you guys. So the way we're doing the call-in segment tonight is we're going to use Google Hangouts like we did last week. There's a link I just posted there. Click it. If you open it on an Android phone, it'll let you straight in. Make sure you mute yourself, by the way, or open it up on a Chrome browser. If you're on an iOS device, you can always download Google Hangouts and join us that way. Come with a problem that you want to vet. We don't want to, hey, I love your shit sort of thing. Like, we appreciate that. Throw that in the notes, but come with a problem that you want to vet, some sort of train wreck that maybe you see on the horizon that you want to talk about. Similar to all the other episodes we've done, we're just going to do it with Hangouts tonight until I get the call-in system added back in. So the link's there if you want to join it. Sean, you did a video that I haven't watched yet. It's like 23 minutes. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but there's a lot of people in the comments talking about it. What was that about with the APA?
Well, a few weeks ago, I invited them to come on my tiny little channel and have a friendly debate with me about their guidelines for working with men and boys. And of course, they ignored me. I knew they were going to ignore me, but I spent the last week or so putting together a video where I dug into their references and I looked at, okay, what are the most important things that they talk about in these guidelines? What are the fundamental concepts? And let's look at the fundamental concepts and see what's behind them. And so I went and checked into some of the references, and my God, it's just a flaming pile of shit. I mean, it's just garbage. It's social justice. Nothing is empirical. Nothing is, at least in the most fundamental aspects of these guidelines. There is some stuff that's empirical, but like the main things are privilege and oppression. These are the two concepts that they build the entire guidelines around. And there's just nothing there, like 30-year-old editorials that they're using as evidence, and these textbooks that are written for like junior high school level, where you're supposed to, if you're a clinician or some kind of counselor, you're supposed to go into the clinic and persuade people to become social justice warriors. And so anyway, go watch the video. I had some fun with it.
Does the APA carry any weight? Like, are they respected?
Yeah, they carry a tremendous amount of weight. They don't carry any weight with me, and this is something I talked about in the video. Like, as an independent clinician, I can ignore these guidelines. I'm not breaking any rules by doing that. But the problem with the APA is that they're the biggest accrediting organization. So that means that if you are somebody who's aspiring to become a psychologist, you're going to look for a program that has APA accreditation. And if you are an employer that's looking for new psychologists, you're going to look for a program that has APA accreditation. So that means that they have this tremendous power to go into these training programs and say, we strongly recommend that you follow these guidelines. And if you want to keep your program open, well, you'll fall in line.
Yeah, so they are kind of forced to do it. Okay, let me just post that link again to join if you guys want to hop on that. There's an article which I sent over to you, Sean, earlier this week, which I will post also in the chat. And it is, it's too long to post for some reason. Why won't that open? Let me just refresh it here, see if I can go right to the URL. Anyway, the title is The Bored Sex. Women more than men tend to feel stultified by long-term exclusivity, despite having been taught that they were designed for it. And I just recognized the author's name as I reread it again before we hopped on this call. It's by Wednesday Martin, who's the same author I mentioned last week, wrote that steaming pile of feminist crap called Untrue, which I'm almost done reading. But basically, she's echoing what Esther Perel said in many of her books, where she's indicating that women's interest and desire in relationships kind of tanks really quick, especially when you live together. Whereas for men, it kind of lasts a lot longer. Like like the desire curve, if you will, is a lot slower to decline than what it is for men. It seems more like a hockey stick sort of curve when it comes to women. What have you seen with respects to that, and what did you think of that article?
It was an interesting article because it fits with some of what I see in the clinic, and it doesn't fit with some of what I see. Which is, I like articles like this where there's a little bit of disparity from what I see in my experience, because it makes me go and look. Okay, there's something isn't lining up here, so I need to investigate this and figure out what it is. But I definitely see that women get bored quicker than men. Men fall in love quicker than women. There is this up here, so I need to investigate this and figure out what it is. But I definitely see that women get bored.
Hold on a second. There you go. Got to mute. Guys, make sure that when you click the link and join, you've got yourself muted. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Helps if they have on headphones too. Helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
With all the feedback. So yeah, what she's saying is that women get bored quicker, and she's essentially, I think she's advocating for open marriages and that sort of thing. I couldn't really tell what her vibe was on that. Did you?
Yeah, well, in her book, she's certainly encouraging women to explore their sexual nature and be promiscuous. She takes she cites a lot of references, not specifically from Chris Ryan, but which I found interesting because he was the primary author of Sex at Dawn, but taking it from Casilda Jeta, which is his wife, and citing her as the origin of the content. So it's almost like she's leaning into the female scope a lot. But yeah, she certainly encourages more promiscuous behavior by women and says it's okay if you want to sleep around.
Yeah, I really don't encounter a lot of that in my practice. Women, even though they get bored quicker, I see so many women that are really devoted, and women that go to heroic lengths to spare.
I've heard you say that before.
Ridiculous relationships.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. We got somebody on. David, if you want to unmute yourself, you have a question or a problem you want to vet before a train wreck, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely.
How you doing?
Hi. How you doing?
Good. Hey, David.
Right.
So welcome. What can we do for you to be useful tonight?
Well, basically, I'd like to start with the fact that it's really a pleasure to be on the channel with you guys. And I essentially had to stay awake. It's currently, what time is it in France? It's actually 2 a.m. in France, basically. So I'll be honest with you, your channel actually helped me through a very tough time in my life. I'll be 27 this year, basically. And I just got out of a really, really devastating relationship with my ex. And I think you're doing a great job for young people out there, most especially people like me. So the question I have essentially would be, I think I have quite a substantial amount of game when it comes to dealing with girls in general. But the problem is, as an Anglophone person in France, which basically means I speak French, but not as fluent as a French person would speak it, which obviously translates into the fact that I don't get as successful as I would like to get with girls in France. So the question now is, how do you think I could get really successful with girls in France? As a matter of fact, I feel like the first thing that comes to their mind most of the times when I get into conversations with them is, how can we take advantage of this guy because he's an Anglophone and he doesn't speak French as much as we do? Do you understand?
It sounds like you were educated in the UK.
Well, pretty much. I'm actually studying my second master's in franchise management. So, I guess.
Okay. Not really a before the train wreck sort of question. So is there something that happened in your last relationship that you want to avoid happening over again right now?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, I came to France when I was 21, and I kind of met my ex, which obviously I needed time to like explore myself and also develop myself at that point. And basically, I think it really went really quickly. I mean, it went too fast. I met a family basically. And I basically was taken advantage of. I didn't have my family with me, and I thought she was my family. And so I was just trying to say, how do you think I could avoid? Of course, I need to be careful in the sense that whoever I'm getting into relationship in the nearest future has to be really precisely, basically, really, like basically, I just need to understand the girl and all of those things. I'm very aware of that. But the question now is, how can I avoid being needy in a situation where I don't have my family with me?
How long were you dating before you were introduced to the family?
Basically, I just understanding when.
Oh, sorry, hold on a sec. Guys, keep yourself muted if you're going to join in, please. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah. So I think we dated for about 6, 7 months. Actually, I think why she introduced me to her family was because she knew what she was actually doing. So when we met, I was actually kind of a player guy. Well, I had also the girls at my disposal. And I think it was calculated in the sense that she thought if she had introduced me to her family, that would give us some sort of chain over me. Do you understand? Psychological chain over me. So I think I understand that from that perspective.
And then why did you guys break up?
We broke up last year when I moved to Paris, actually.
And why?
Why was because we had these ups and downs. I cheated on her a couple of times. She did the same thing. And this very last one, she said, okay, so basically, I went to Hungary for a job position for an information technology job. So I was there for 5 months, and it was kind of like a long distance relationship. We were always on the phone together. We really discussed all the time. But what happened was that what I thought was really weird was because of the fact that after I came back, a month after I came back to France, she got pregnant. And she wasn't even aware of this. She didn't know she was pregnant. I thought I was the one that felt something is really not right about this girl because she felt, I mean, our boobs started getting unnecessarily hard.
Hold on a second, 1 sec. She got pregnant by by who? By you or by somebody else?
This is what I'm not aware of, basically. So after I go back to France, 1 month after I go back to France, she got pregnant.
And she claimed you were the father, or?
That was what she said. She said I was the father. So this
And
kind
what
of
happened to the baby?
So basically, I went back to my country. I went back to Nigeria. I thought it was really weird because I also the thing she had really really colonized me psychologically. So I had to like go back to my country to meet my family and the rest of those. And by the time I went back to Nigeria, a few months afterwards, because I really disconnected all contact with her. And a few months afterwards, she contacted me and she said she had already done the abortion in Netherlands, which was a bit weird for me. I was like, how would you even think of having an abortion without consulting me if you really thought I was the father of the child?
Well, I mean, you ran off on her too back home too, so you got to understand that she's
Yeah.
going to do something like that. Why aren't you in control of the birth? Like, why aren't you taking care of the birth control? Like, how did she get knocked up?
Actually, we weren't married. We were just dating, and she was using birth control, birth pills, the regular ones. And
She was on the pill, you said.
yes, she was on pills.
Yeah, and this is Exhibit A as far as why you need to control the birth, right? Like, you either need to use condoms or you need to be a really good puller outer or something along that line. Because when women tell you that they're on the pill, this is the sort of thing that can happen. This is why this is one of the iron rules of Tomasi, always being in control of the birth. What do you got on this one, Sean? Do you have any questions?
Well, I'm listening, and I like your question because it sounds like you're talking about you found some vulnerability in yourself when you met this girl, and now you're asking, how do I avoid this vulnerability again? And I think that's a brilliant question. And I think I'm wondering if you answered it right off the bat, David, when you were talking about family and being disconnected, and maybe that's the answer to your question: is you building a social circle of people that you're pretty tight with there. What do you think?
What was the question? Could you repeat the question? I think might be good.
Yeah, I'm saying I think that you answered the question at the beginning, which is how do you were talking about family and how you're isolated there. And so maybe one of the things that would protect you from being taken advantage of again is you getting a really tight circle of friends and family, quote family.
Yeah, okay. I think this is a very good subject actually. So being a person where I really fancy Elon Musk as a person, but not the fact they actually got married and got divorced to the same lady twice, to the same woman twice, but because of the fact that I believe in the entrepreneurial spirits and being a Nigerian, it's not economically suitable for someone like me in Nigeria currently, which means I would probably have to be outside Nigeria to achieve my goals. Do you understand? So, which essentially also means that I have to be self-sufficient emotionally, psychologically, and on every ramification, if possible.
So you can't have a circle of friends there?
Of course, I do have friends, but being a Scorpio and also having to be backstabbed over times, which means friends say, okay, they do care about you, and eventually they end up doing otherwise. they end up doing the other way around. So it kind of leaves me in a situation where I feel like I can't really have friends that I believe I'll trust. And most especially when I'm in a country where I don't really speak. Well, of course, I do speak French, but I don't speak French as fluent as a French person to make the very best kind of friends. I don't know if
How
that.
old are you, David?
I'll be 27 this year.
Okay. Well, the first thing I heard from you was part of the reason you were vulnerable to this woman was that you were isolated. So
Yeah.
you're presenting that as a problem. And at 27, maybe you're figuring out how you can vet your friends. That's something you don't figure out right off the bat.
Well, okay, so I think the question of friends are really overrated. I think friends are really overrated, to be honest.
Why?
Speaking of what I've been through with friends, Connie friends actually. I actually still have one I blocked on Instagram recently, just today.
Hold on a second. Hold a sec. Why aren't friends important, but women are? Like, why are you putting women up on a pedestal? Why are they the biggest priority
No,
for you?
I think I probably didn't do a good job on explaining that. I don't think friends are
Well, I'm
far.
not saying that you did or didn't do a good job. All I'm doing is I'm just holding up a mirror and just reflecting back based on what you're
Okay.
talking about, right? The other thing that you said a couple of times now is, how am I supposed to have any luck in France with women if I don't speak perfect French? But there's a fan club for everything.
Yeah.
Like there's a fan club for black men from Nigeria with a slight
Mhm.
British accent living in France that don't speak
Yeah.
perfect French, right? Like there's a fan club for this look, okay?
Yeah,
Shaved
yeah,
head with a beard, right? Like it just exists. It's out there, right? So why are you focusing on the negative aspect of the ones that shoot you down just because they don't like your French?
I think it's a very good way of. I think it's a very good way of saying things as well. I definitely need to do a better job on believing in people once again.
Well, I think you got to believe more in yourself and your abilities and your own network and the value of a network. I mean, you're, a really good friend of mine that runs these networking events says that your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
Right. And by building a good network or a good circle of influence, because you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, you're going to find that to be a lot more useful than chasing women. When you chase excellence and you work on yourself, the women are going to come to you. You're going to be spoiled for choice, as the British say, right?
Well, actually, I don't. I honestly don't chase girls that much. I really pay attention to my studies currently. The new business I'm trying to start.
Right. But you opened up your first question with, how do I get girls in France?
Yeah. I mean, well, I need to have a balance within my social life and my personal life. Do you understand? I spend literally most of my time with myself, which means I get to read often. I get to watch a lot of videos as well, and also I need a balance between the both aspects actually. So, which is why I think I could as well get with any other girl on the street, which I think really isn't a big deal. But thinking of STDs, sexual energy transfer, and the rest of those, I'm really trying to avoid things like that. Which was really why I asked the question of how can I attract quality women, probably on a non-exclusive term, which is really what I'm looking for at the moment, and not
Well, you're
exclusive.
going to find quality women by being a quality man, right?
Right.
By being a top shelf, desirable man that women want to be with, that other men want to be. It's really as simple as that. It's really not that much more complicated than that, right? But continuously asking yourself questions like, why aren't these women with me, or is my French not good enough, or whatever the case may be, I think is a little bit off track. I'm gonna kind of add my commentary on that, and I'll throw it off to Sean before we wrap it up with you if he's got anything else to ask or add.
Yeah, just what you said, David. You started off by saying that your lack of a network is what made you vulnerable, and so you're kind of arguing against that point, but you're the one that presented it. And I'll save you 20 years because it took me a long time to figure out the value of a network and how to do it, because I was a lot like you. Like I didn't trust anybody to do anything. I need to do things myself. I'm the only one who knows how to do things correctly. And it took me a long time to figure out that no, it is actually really valuable, and it makes life a lot more fun when you have a connection with other people. And so if you're saying that that's making you vulnerable, you can keep doing it for a while, but you'll eventually get to the point where you're tired of it, I think.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Well, thank you.
All right, David.
Good luck, man.
Talk to you later. Ciao. All right. Let's see who else we got here. I'm going to hover over the names. We got Hans and Chad. So Hans, we'll go to you first. I think you were waiting longer. Go ahead if you want to unmute yourself. You got a problem you want to vet, train wreck you want to avoid. Hans, can you hear us, Hans? Before the train wreck to Hans. There you go.
All right, good. I just have to unmute myself. Just
there you go.
Okay, so this is kind of an educational before the train wreck, because I'm in Scandinavia, and I go to what they're called secondary school, which is basically high school, but it's until you're 21 years old.
Okay.
And then you'll get finally graduated with a university bachelor degree by the time you're 30. By the time you said that you're supposed to be a billionaire. No, millionaire, sorry. And I have a vision. I have a plan, not just to make a lot of money, but to help masculinity as a whole. And if everything works out, which it should, I should be making my first million by the end of 2020. The problem is that education isn't a part of that plan at all. And I'm just wasting my time in secondary school. And not only that, ever since I began to read on the red pill, logic and philosophy, I've been threatened. I've been like teachers have, I guess, teachers' authority gets, I don't know, they get scared because of my aura or something. Like I've really tried to keep myself down lately. But I have teachers hire kids to beat me up. I had teachers call me a coward in public. I've had teachers to parody me on stage. I've had teachers who falsely framed me of threatening a kid. And now recently, I had a teacher who abused his authority on me by reducing one of my grades because I didn't want to put up a chair that wasn't mine in class after the class was done. And he openly admitted that. So I'm constantly getting punished, and I'm constantly getting thrown out of secondary school and right back in. So I'm just thinking of just quitting it and finding a full-time job and making some money and starting up my business. And I just need confirmation on that because, like, I don't want to waste 3 years of my life just doing this shit constantly.
Okay, so how old are you?
17.
And you're constantly getting in trouble with the faculty of the school.
Yeah. The
and
teachers
And why do you keep getting in trouble with the faculty?
Mostly because of my beliefs. I've been called a cowardless little conservative by my my politics teacher.
Sorry, your teacher's calling you a coward because of your conservative values?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Man, I don't know what to say. Like, they really fucking hate that.
Well,
and I've like,
I mean, the school system in Scandinavia is very left-leaning. It's very liberal. It's very feminist. So, I mean, I'm not entirely surprised, but you know, for a teacher to say you're a conservative coward is a little bit of a, I mean, that's a big red flag for me. Like, I just wouldn't bother with school. I mean, like, I'm not a big fan of post-secondary education, if I'm being honest. Like, I went to a college, and for the most part, I mean, today anyway, it's even worse. It's an indoctrination system for feminist values and ideologies, especially in many of the Western schools. But I mean, I would tell most men that don't fit well in the school system to take that 10, 20 grand in tuition and invest it in a business and try to start something up and just roll the dice. I mean, you got a 1 in 10 chance probably of getting something off the ground. If not, you'll learn a hell of a lot more blowing 10 or 20 grand trying to get a business off the ground than you will listening to some reject tell you that you're a conservative loser.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that guy who called me that, he has been teaching us for like 3 months how bad men are because we are making more money than women despite our education. He like shows us some graph of like 2 educations, which education like has taken more years. And then he basically just shows us that men are better than making money than women.
Okay, got it. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. Like, if you guys in the comments are like, kick this guy off the phone, he doesn't have it before the train wreck sort of thing. Give it a minute, because the thing that he's trying to vet is, should I continue to waste my time? You know, is it going to be a train wreck for me to continue sitting through classes while teachers call me conservative cowards? What do you think, Sean?
So I got questions. He's talking about some pretty wild behaviors, like teachers hiring people to beat you up and so forth. And so there's some common denominator here. If all these teachers are ganging up on you and singling you out, I don't know what that common denominator is. At 17, I would want to make sure that that common denominator is not that you're being a dick, that there's something else going on. So what is the common denominator here?
I think it's just like, I don't know, like this might be too broad, but I think like people have told me before that they can like smell this, like not arrogance, but like self-confidence in a way. And I think to a point I threaten people. I'm very anti-authority. So I think like the ego can be very damaged, like threatened if I'm very critical of people. And if I don't want to waste my time with people, I'm like, I won't show that, because like this is my third secondary school now, because I've been thrown out of the other two. But this one I've tried to keep myself very low.
How long have you been like feeling this way towards the school system and the teachers?
About a year. In April last year, I had my ligament torn because a kid beat me up while the teacher had blocked my way. So I was thrown down on some rocks with my back first, and now my arm is permanently damaged, and they won't give me insurance. So
did this start when you kind of took the red pill?
Yeah.
And started to voice these different views and opinions?
Yeah.
Sean?
Well, I don't disagree with anything Rich says about like if you don't belong in school, then you don't belong in school. You should acknowledge that as soon as it's a reality. At 17, I don't know if you're ready to make that decision yet. The reason I say that is that you've got these government employees that are bearing down on you constantly, right? And guess what? When you go into business, you're going to be dealing with government employees bearing down on you. Rich can tell you about that. I know he can tell you that story. I can tell you a little bit of that story, but not to the same degree that Rich can. And so there's a little bit of learning the game here that maybe you haven't mastered yet, because you still have to get, I don't know what you call it there, but here we have your high school diploma, and it's kind of a worthwhile thing to get. You don't need it, but
well, that was the thing I was thinking, because like high school is very early, and I didn't want to quit school like necessary. And I'm good at school. I'm actually a very good student, but it's just my attitude and the way they.
So here's the thing, though. I mean, like one of the skills you got to learn in life is how to get along with assholes, right? Yeah. And there's going to come a time in life where maybe you've become that multimillionaire that you're talking about, and the whole point of doing the work so that you've created the value to making the money, in my estimation, like one of the values of that is to make fuck you money so you can actually tell people to go fuck themselves.
Right.
Which is something that I thoroughly enjoy. So, back to the point of that concept, you're really not in a position to tell anybody to go fuck themselves at 17. Like you don't have a high school diploma. You don't really have the skill of shutting up and sitting back and collecting the information and just learning how to be silent in that space. Who said that? Anyway, go get him, Richie says. But like the thing being though, dude, is like I've sat in front of government employees that don't know shit about policy making or imposing useful beliefs on financial institutions, companies that get people out of credit card debt. Like I've been through it, and I've had to, thankfully I knew how to bite my tongue and speak at the appropriate time. But I went through a year and a half of doing that in a way similar to what you're dealing with at 17. But I was able to come out the other end as a winner, simply because I knew how to navigate that landscape and make obstacles that fell in my path the way to the solution that I needed to get to. So maybe if you look at it as an opportunity and a learning experience of how to deal with assholes and know when to shut your mouth, like you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth in that ratio for a reason. You should be using your ears twice as much as you're opening your pie hole. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. I agree to a certain extent. It's just that it's getting so risky now. Like my choices now with this teacher is as follows. I can go to the principal which I did last time, and then I got falsely framed of threatening a teacher. Or I can just sit back and shut up. And even if I go to the principal and she says, yeah, okay, let's talk to this guy, let's get things.
Well, how's your way been working out for you so far? I mean, you've been thrown downstairs, you've had teachers call you a conservative coward. Like this is the baseline belief system that the faculty is using when it comes to decision making, right?
Yeah.
So how are you going to change that by pointing to beliefs and observations that you see that don't agree with their value system? You're never going to convince anybody that doesn't agree with you to see it your way. You're just going to get into some form of conflict. And at 17, you're going to have a real hard time winning it, in that equation. So a skill that I think that you need to learn at this stage of life is when to shut your mouth and when to listen. And you should probably reverse the ratios, because if you're getting yourself into trouble this much, you need to shut your mouth, zip it, and just listen and just observe what happens. And look around the room when somebody says something that you vehemently oppose. If there's 50 students in that auditorium, and the teacher says something that you're vehemently opposed to, you don't like it, you think it's stupid, but look around and see what people do when they say that, and see if there's any reaction, see if anybody steps up and says anything, or how they step up and say it. You might find a lesson with that, right?
I hear what you're saying, but that's what I've been trying to do for about one to 2 months now, because I don't want to get thrown out again. So I've really I've kept myself to playing Clark Kent to my Superman, as I've called it. But even just the small thing, not putting up a chair, that got me in problems now. They are threatening me with they would degrade my grades if they find me arrogant to some extent, and that's so subjective that I can't
Have you read the 48 Laws of Power?
I have. And I definitely see the don't outshine your master in me. That might be my biggest problem.
Well, I would certainly read it again, because there's lessons in there that you haven't fully comprehended yet.
Okay.
But go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, there's one more thing, Hans. I'm hearing in your language a lot of stuff is happening to you, which tells me that there's some skills you don't have on board yet. Instead of thinking, how can I manage this situation? And I think that needs to be your question that you ask yourself every morning and every night is, how can I manage this situation? So 48 Laws is a good book. There's a book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. Great book for taking that sense that things are happening to you and internalizing it, and you being the one that is actually happening to the world, but you're doing it in a good way. So you got in trouble for not putting a chair up. Well, the way you handle that is say, you know what, that was my responsibility. I'm sorry, I will put that chair up.
Yeah. Okay.
That doesn't mean you're kissing anyone's ass. That doesn't mean you're lowering yourself. That just means you're taking responsibility for what's going on around you.
I like that way of looking at it. I'll do that. Thank you.
You'll get there.
You will.
Yeah. So what, in conclusion, what is your, I shouldn't quit school, I should go through the 3 years of secondary school?
Yeah, I would wait until you get to at least 20. I mean, you don't sound like a very good fit for the school system the way that it's structured right now, but I mean, you need to learn the skill of when to shut up and when to speak. And
okay.
Setting aside the academics and, the diploma, the piece of paper on the wall, that's something that every man should get good at some point. If you can do it now, it's going to save you later on down the road, right?
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And if you were leaving school because it was boring you to death and it just was a waste of your time, but your relationships were squared away, then I would say that's a different question. But you walking away from school because you're being pushed out, no, don't let them do that to you. You learn how to handle them.
Yeah. I do find it boring. It's not that I'm kind of I don't know why I'm solving these puzzles that they want me to solve. I'm kind of bored of that, but I can do it if I put myself together and write an essay or something. I can get a good grade. I'm a good student, so it's not that. It's just
hey, Hans. Just so you know, you're not going to be the first. You're not going to be the last. I was the exact same way in school. I found it very unchallenging. I was very bored. I was very distracted. They put me through testing when I was a lot younger in elementary school to see if I was, learning disabled. I put an IQ test and I scored very high. The school system, the way that it's structured, generally speaking, in the West, is really there to teach girls. Like it's built around how girls learn, not how boys learn. So don't sweat it too much. But there's lessons there, again, in dealing with these types of people and environments like that, where you're going to have, because I mean, if you think you're dealing with it now at 17, if you think you're going to make $1 million or a couple $1 million out in the workforce, but not learn how to deal with people like this, because the vast majority of the population, probably, you know, where you are in Scandinavia, because it's very left leaning, is going to share the same values that the faculty is at your school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you've got to master the skill of how do you deal with fucking idiots, basically.
I like putting it that way.
All right, man. I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you.
See ya. Ciao.
Finally.
All right. Chad, are you up?
Yes. Hello.
Go.
Yeah. Let me be the first one to stay on topic, but the way I feel towards violence is that it gets ramped up. Nobody just starts by stabbing you. I feel like you let little shit or little things get out of hand and it escalates to more violent acts. What's your thoughts on that?
I would say that's probably pretty accurate. You know, it's not going to start with somebody throwing a knife at you. It's going to come with a push or a shove, or, you know, maybe it's not a knife. It's a cell phone or a stapler or something, right?
Right, exactly. I wanted to ask Dr. Smith, what are your thoughts on Jordan Peterson? I know you guys did a podcast on him, but he touched on one thing, operant conditioning. He actually mentioned that. Do you feel like, I mean, he kind of sort of has the idea, but he's still blue pill. What's your thoughts?
On operant conditioning or his philosophy?
He mentioned operant conditioning, which means he kind of sort of has the idea of rewarding bad behavior rewarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior. So I don't think he's completely blue pill. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't care if he's red pill or blue pill. My thing with Jordan Peterson is I know there's a lot of guys in the manosphere that don't like him because he has some beliefs that don't square with what a lot of guys in the manosphere think. But my thought on someone like Jordan Peterson is, all right, in the big ledger in the sky, is he doing more harm or is he doing more good? And a guy like that is doing a lot more good, saving a lot more lives than certainly I could ever take credit for. So he's got a lot more checks in the plus column than in the negative column. And I like a lot of what he has to say. I think he's a pretty wise man. Yeah,
I echo that. I mean, there's a lot of people that take jabs at Peterson, and I've done it. You know, like I read his 12-stage books or 12 Steps for Life. I did a book review on it. It's a good book, you know, but like Sean points out, it definitely does more good than bad. But you said that you were going to stay on point. You have a before the train X sort of question or a scenario that you wanted to go over?
No, I just wanted to get your opinion on the fact that it's always, it escalates and never starts out, you know, just straight off the bat violence. It's always like you let little stuff go and it escalates, just like with everything else with the fetishization process, like you said. It's always gradual. I feel like it's not like men where it, you know, just escalates.
Yeah, there'll be a lead up to it. Maybe she's got road rage. Maybe she's got a bad temperament to the wait staff. You know, It's going to be something, right?
Yeah, I'm going to give myself a plug here. A long time ago, 20 years ago, I wrote my first book. I was just fascinated by violence and aggression and what causes it and how to stop. And the reason I got on this question was growing up in a bar and just watching what went down when people were in conflict, watching how my father handled it. And so I spent a long time studying it. And I wrote this book called Surviving Aggressive People. And I talk about how there's basically a couple of paths for people to get to violent behavior. One path is they get pushed into a corner. They run out of options. They run out of coping skills. And so they start lashing out. The other is that predatory behavior that you're talking about, where people start zeroing in on ever narrowing circles and they start testing boundaries and they start seeing what they can get away with. And they push a little bit, then they push a little bit more. And the way we behave when we're being predatory is incredibly similar to the way like a big cat will behave on the savannah, where they're circling a herd and they're poking at it and they're trying to find weaknesses. They don't just run into the herd and do a cannonball. You know, they pick their target very carefully. So I agree with you 100% that it is usually something that develops over time, particularly with domestic violence. That's not usually a situation where people are pushed into a corner suddenly. It's usually something that evolves. So yeah, you're right.
All right, Chad. Thanks, man.
Okay, before I go, Dr. Smith, when is the audiobook coming?
For which
your
one?
first, the tactical guide.
Oh, the tactical guide, the audiobook's out there. And
Oh, my bad.
yeah, I got an awesome narrator. He's a guy named Chris Abell, did an awesome job.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. And
Cool.
Rich, man, miss you on the Red Man podcast.
Don't worry about it. I'm sure Redman will do fine. Maybe at some point I'll reconnect with him in the future, but I'm glad you're enjoying the Before the Train Wreck.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
You too.
I think we got, let me just check here. Classical Positioning. You're up. You can unmute yourself. You have a scenario you want to vet before the train wreck? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay. So what I was kind of wondering about was, like, how do you deal with the kind of guys that are going to be in your life when you're trying out these things you're learning that are going to be like trying to take you down a peg every step of the way? You know, oh, you don't need to do that. Oh, you shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, they're always going to be trying to, bring you down and say that everything you're learning from these books and stuff is totally useless.
Which books are you referencing specifically?
For instance, the Tactical Guide to Women. Like, I went through the audiobook, and I mean, it seemed like exactly what the whole men online thing needed was, like, just, vet the people that come into your life more. But it's pretty clear that, like, from my experience, for instance, with women, they tend to, like, emotionally manipulate you into not wanting to do these things.
Well, they don't want you to know how to filter the chaff from the wheat. Have you ever had that, Sean?
What are they trying to prevent you from doing?
So, for instance, like, I mean, I noticed, like, a girlfriend that I had dated for a while, like, she just gradually eroded all my boundaries away. Like, I just, like, when I really just wanted to move away from her, and she was trying to make me look all embarrassed and stuff in front of friends and stuff, and I didn't have the gumption to just tell her no, and I ended up in a relationship with somebody who ended up cheating on me, and everybody around me is looking at me like, what's this guy doing? He's getting basically run over every single step of the way by this girl, and he's just standing, because it's just so awkward. I don't want to, like, make a situation where she's going to get some other guy to come kick my ass or something, or she's going to try to create some sort of situation where, I look like, I look like I'm abusing her in some way just because I'm telling her no.
I got confused. Are you still with this lady?
No, it was a while ago.
Okay. So this is what we were just talking about with Chad, that you started off with little concessions and they got bigger and bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what was the first sign that in retrospect she was pushing past your boundaries?
Well, she started, I called her one time and she's all crying on the phone and saying somebody broke up with her. I'm like, okay, it's okay. It's okay, whatever. And, she just kind of slowly keeps on inching her way in, like trying to get with me. And I didn't want to date her. And I ended up actually going out with her. And it seemed like it was right there, dating somebody I just didn't want to go out with.
What was her technique for getting past the no? You were telling her no and she was ignoring no, right? So what was her technique for doing that?
Just kind of being kind of whiny and whimpery, and not only that, but just on my end, like the fact that I don't want her to make a scene next time I'm around her, just speaking to her over the phone and just saying no. It's like, I don't want her to, like, if I'm hanging out with her in person next time, she's going to say, hey, you said no, you did this to me, you did that to me. And then, get a whole bunch of other white knights just rally around her or something,
That probably wouldn't have happened right off the bat if you were better at defending. This sounds like I'm being a jerk to you. I don't mean it that way. But if you were better at defending that initial boundary, it probably wouldn't have reached that pitch, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So part of it is that you didn't want to look bad. Was that part? And God, it sounds like I'm being a jerk to you. But was part of it that you didn't want to look bad in front of other people?
Yeah, I mean, it was, and also just the desperation on my end. Like right now, I mean, that was a few years ago. Like I feel like I'll get myself into that same situation just because, like, I'm on a job where I'm alone all the time, and I don't mind it because I've been, doing my own thing for a long time. But if the first person that comes along, I might jump on it just even if it's a bad match, just out of desperation, and I don't want to get myself in some horrible situation where I'm like paying for a kid wasn't mine or something, you know.
How old are you, man?
I'm 26.
Okay, well, it's good you're asking these questions at 26, but just, dude, like, you're going to get out of life what you tolerate. I mean, if you're going to put up with crap, you're going to get crap. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, if you're spotting terrible behavior, which it sounds like you're picking up on a lot earlier now, then just, you know, make sure you identify it and set boundaries around it. Because as soon as somebody crosses your bottom line and you let them go there without pushing back, then you're basically telling them that that's not your bottom line, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Another thought here is that you're telling us that you're worried you're going to be in a position where you're so desperate that you're going to make bad decisions. And what somebody would do if they were getting over a substance, for example, is they would know that there's going to be a time that's going to come where they're going to be so overwhelmed with temptation that they're really going to put themselves at risk. And one of the techniques to have there is an escape valve. That means you got somebody that you can go to, you got a sponsor, or you have some other replacements therapy, and you identify your triggers. Like this girl, a trigger for you might be this girl that completely repulses me is starting to look kind of good. That's when you would use your escape hatch. That means that you call your sponsor, or you do this other thing that you already have worked out, so that you're not trying to figure out in the moment how to avoid making that big mistake.
I see. Yeah, that would definitely be a good idea. Just try to start forming that social circle of people that'll actually stick up for me and stuff, and have my best interests in mind.
Yeah, I love that you're asking this question at 26. That's brilliant, man.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight. Catch up with you next time.
Bye.
See ya. I think we're up on David now. So if you want to unmute yourself, you got a question, something you want to vet?
Rich, Sean, hey, how you guys doing?
What's up, man?
Good. So I recently just learned about you guys, actually, the stuff that you guys do, the stream that you have and everything like that here from a friend of mine. So I saw the topic you guys were talking about, and I wanted to kind of join in and chime in a little bit here with you guys. So if the topic here is talking about violent women, I just want to start off by saying that I'm 32 years old, and I recently just got divorced for my first time. The marriage happened pretty quickly. We were together for about 3 years, and she decided that she wanted to go and join the military. And that was kind of like a litmus test for us to decide whether or not we were actually going to stay together. So the question became, hey, look, are we going to just break up? Are we going to try and take this relationship to the next level and, try to make this work going together? Now, me, myself, I'm prior service as well. So I had been in the military, and I knew kind of what it was like to live that lifestyle. And I also knew very, very well that marriages in general don't really have a good shelf life. So when you add things like military life and military training and stuff like that into the equation, it also kind of adds up to it as well too. So I think ultimately what ended up happening is that was a big leading contributor to why we ended up failing in the marriage, I would say. But the big thing that really kind of surfaced was throughout our entire relationship, there had been signs where her and I had gone back and forth, I guess, like we'd have our fights, our arguments and everything. And for the first time ever, I would say that I ran into a woman who had actually not been afraid to be physical with me. She would have these spurts where, she'd cook me dinner. And then next thing I knew, because we weren't doing something that maybe she wanted to do or something, she'd be taking some of my stuff and throwing it around. Or there was one time where I was actually sitting down just having dinner that she just made me, and she actually knocked the food plate right out of my hands, and she decided she wanted to start an argument with that. Ultimately, keeping a long story as short as I can, even though we went through things like this, we had experiences like this, as I got married to her and I moved down to Fort Knox, Kentucky with her, what ended up happening is we wound up in a kind of a violent exchange where she had actually physically attacked me. She punched me in my face. She started attacking me, pummeling me on my back and everything. And
did you guys have kids?
No, we never had kids. No.
Well, thank God for that, because otherwise you'd be tied into her for the rest of your life. But did she do any of this stuff before you guys got married?
Yeah, so there were definitely times where this kind of stuff happened. We had a situation where her and I were going back and forth. I was actually out at a bar one time having a drink with a buddy of mine, and she had actually followed me to the bar. And when she saw that him and I were just sitting there talking, she had gotten so mad that she actually went up to the bar and like chucked my drink right at like into the bar. Like my drink was on the table, and she just like threw it like right at the bartender pretty much.
And you thought, I want to wife this woman up after that?
No, yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. But like, I'm looking at the fact that I was able to see signs, but I was so lacking this kind of like, I guess, an emotional depth with myself and like an emotional understanding or a piece of emotional mastery of myself that I allowed it to happen. Like I allowed myself to just get so caught up and so involved with this woman that I completely like ignored all of these other signs.
So,
you know?
David, if you had one piece of advice for younger guys, what would it be?
Man, I guess what I would say is that you really don't have the knowledge ahead of time to know what to expect moving into this. But I can definitely say that if you do learn something and you start seeing the signs, to really go out of your way to try to gain some kind of emotional mastery over this, because if you allow your emotions to make your decisions for you, you're going to put yourself in a very precarious situation. And that's exactly what I did. And what I'm kind of doing here with you guys is I'm kind of looking forward because I'm kind of ready to get into my next relationship now. And I want to go into it with a level of clarity and understanding that I have now, but I want to make sure that maybe I'm not missing something. And I kind of want like some feedback from you guys to see what advice you might be able to offer me, or maybe some kind of hints or some kind of insight that I'm not thinking of already.
Well, how did you talk yourself into ignoring the warning signs?
I think it was about sex, things like sex and like just enjoying my time and stuff.
There it is, the crazy
sex.
There
it is, right? Like, it's just like, my God, mind-blowing, bomb-ass sex, and just knowing that I always had a girl by my side, and, she cooks for me, she does all this other stuff for me and everything, and man, I'm just like, I got so caught up in it.
And she qualified to go to the military and use weapons now too, right?
Yeah, and that's hot as hell too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, like I want to kind of get your insights and your opinions on kind of how can I avoid this trap again, even if I feel like I'm growing and I feel like I'm developing. What are some things that I can take away to just make sure I don't fall into that again?
Well, just watch how she behaves, to other people and stuff. I mean, if she's gonna like, you can't have a beer with a friend and she comes to the club or the bar and like tracks you down and starts throwing a hissy fit in front of people publicly. Like, that would have been like a fuck you right there. That would be like, we're done. Like, just delete her number, block it. Like, we're done. Like, but like, why would you keep going back to that? Like, why would you allow yourself to get beat up like that?
Sure.
Because I mean, like, anytime there's a conflict between a man and a woman and it's a, domestic issue, even if she started the whole thing and cut you up, I mean, you're going away in handcuffs in the back of the squad car, not her.
Yeah. And if I'm, trying not to disclose complete detail over everything that happened, but essentially, there was, since it was a military engagement thing, the military kind of had to take action and get involved in the situation as well too. And basically, long story short is, no matter what, I was made to look like the bad guy and she was made to look like,
Right. Because believe all women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So if you imagine a ledger for this girl, you had all the pluses on one side, great sex, she cooks for you, she's always by your side, whatever's on that side. But then you had this other thing where, maybe the first item on the con side of that ledger was she threw a fit in public. And you said, I'm just going to ignore that side of the sheet because I like this other side of the sheet better. So you going to catch yourself doing that next time?
No, I mean, I can't do it. I got to make sure that I'm constantly keeping my mind, open and realizing that there are other options out there and that I can do better.
Right. So I also get the sense that like you're a sweet, optimistic guy. Maybe you want to see the best in her.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would definitely say I'm an optimist. Yeah.
So your job is going to be to stay in touch with both sides of that ledger, including the side that says she had a fit in public.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Get in touch with your pessimistic side.
A little bit of the dark side, I guess, right? see some of that.
There you go.
Well, it exists, right? There's a dark side to some women, and for some reason, because men put women up on a pedestal, and they think that, you know, women's sexuality is a rarity. There's lots of other women out there, dude, that don't bring this kind of baggage. And you know how you figure out which women bring the baggage and which one don't bring the baggage? Do you know how to do that?
Not particularly. I can't think of something off the top of my head.
Spin plates. You date like several of them in a non-monogamous fashion, and you'll find out which ones are crazy. Like the cream will rise to the top, and the crap will fall off, the side. So, I mean, if you're dating a couple women and you're out with your friend, and one of them shows up at the bar and tracks you down and has a hissy fit in front of everybody, you'll be like, "This one's done now. Like you're fired."
Right. So just having that total abundance, essentially, like being able to come from that mindset where you just know, hey, look,
you put up with a lot less bullshit is what'll end up happening. You'll spot it sooner, and you'll be like, well, Kelly's behaving like a 9-year-old spaz, and Jennifer's sweet and doesn't do this sort of stuff, right? So you can see the contrast. It's a lot clearer. Whereas if you're tied down to the crazy, and she has a spaz in the bar with your friend, but later on that night she gives you like the best sex you've ever had, sort of thing, then you're less likely to overlook the crazy.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, I got into a fight with her one time, and the way that we fixed it was, she went off and she did what she does best, and she leveraged sex basically to kind of.
Dude, you got lucky, man. This could be a lot worse. Like, you could have had kids with this chick. You could have been dishonorably discharged by the military. There's all kinds of things that could have gone bad. I mean, take your wounds and move on from this, and don't let it happen again. Never let a woman do that to you ever again. Learn from this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to let you go. And we got, who's up here? Jimbo. I think you've been in and out a couple times. You want to unmute yourself? Did you have a question?
G'day, yeah. How you going?
Hey, what's going on? We got an Australian.
Sure do. G'day from down under. I had a question and also a comment. I guess I've been fortunate enough to have the experience of the sort of borderline personality chick, the perfect storm textbook. Very seductive, ex-stripper type girl, wanted to get married, wanted to have kids, but also ranging from manipulative sort of early stage behavior right through to violence of the full-blown nature. Spare the details, but the cop basically pulled me aside and said, look, you're extremely lucky. Next time, this may be interpreted as your fault. Get away from her. Run, don't walk, don't go to counseling. So I had that experience, and just a comment on that violence is that, yeah, they don't punch you in the face on the first date. It's very much like they're vetting whether or not you will accept that. And when you look back, there's so many opportunities to realize that that's what they're doing, whether they're conscious of it or not.
Can you share your experience, what it was that made the cop pull you aside to say, hey, look, mate, you want to get out of this one quick?
I'll try to keep it as brief, but basically we hadn't seen each other for a little while. I was trying to pull away because it was becoming an unmanageable relationship. Obviously, it was just nothing could be done right. She had an uncanny ability to create this drama. I hadn't seen her for a while. I still had the white knight. She's a troubled girl. I'm in love with her. I want to make sure she's okay. It became a really, now with perspective, it was just a situation that was a lot of bullshit involved and a lot of believing bullshit. So I'd gone around. She was being seductive. She was extremely sexy. We started drinking together. She started talking about getting married again and moving to Melbourne. And I was like, look, let's try and string 24 hours together where you don't basically be a bitch, and it just escalated, and she snapped and started having a fit and kicking the dog, and I left the room and was thinking, oh fuck, this again, what am I going to do? And it stopped. She calmed down. I thought, oh, it's a miracle. She's sort of like a baby, self-settling, and she opens the doors to the sunroom or wherever, and she had her hands down This is where it's kind of chilling to think of. Very calculated. Her hands were down and open, like she was going to give me a hug. And as soon as I sort of let my guard in for that, she launched, and it was just like a savage animal sort of attack. So she was trying to kill me in her mind. And that went on for a while. My phone got like, she rang the cops, and on the third time that she kind of attacked me, I was kept avoiding and de-escalating, and she was saying, "Help me, help me, help me," and I was like, "What the fuck?" And this time I didn't realize she'd called the cops.
Yeah, you were on the phone then at that point.
And yeah, so anyway, it went like that. The cops rocked up. She was telling them that I was trying to kill her and all this kind of stuff, and they looked at her and looked at no evidence of what she said had been done. They looked at
and
me.
This is a stripper?
Yeah, she wasn't a stripper at the time. She had been for a few years prior, and I met her through my sister, and she was, wasn't working as a stripper. So, I had thought that she was at a stage of her life where she wasn't about that life. But yeah.
And she kicked your dog, or was it her dog?
It was her dog, and her dog.
She kicked her own dog.
Yeah, yeah.
That's, dude, like anybody that's cruel to animals is a fucking asshole, right?
True.
I mean, you should be able to spot that early on, but I mean, like, you got all kinds of red flags. I mean, this is like more red flags than a Chinese communist parade, right? You got somebody that was a stripper.
Perfect storm. Perfect storm.
Yeah. And one of the things that, should be mentioned here, which is relevant to everybody watching, hopefully people that watch this in the future will grasp this, but if you get yourself in a scenario like this, like he's talking about, where she's basically, trying to draw him into conflict, makes a phone call, like help sort of, you leave, get in your car and drive and leave. You are not in the same space as her when women behave like that, because it will be your fault. I mean, this is like more red flags than a Chinese communist. Hang on a second. Got to mute you guys. When you join in, make sure you got yourself muted, please. So I think you learned a valuable lesson there, and you shared a great experience for everybody to, at least spot a red flag like that. But did you have any other sort of questions? Or
I certainly learned a lesson, and what I thought maybe you guys could comment on is that you're not responsible for somebody's violent behavior and how they choose to deal with things, but it's hard to admit that a certain amount of responsibility for putting yourself there. There's something going on with your own, the way you view yourself in the world, and to be in that situation. Looking back now, it's ridiculous that I would even spend a minute in that situation, but at the time it seemed like the only place to be. But I would say one thing to look out for as men is, this idea of masculinity. Can you handle it? And I've seen other men go through it, and there's this kind of like idea that, other men couldn't handle a woman like this, and then it becomes this thing. They play on this idea of how much abuse can you take, and if you can't take it, you're not masculine. So I just thought I'd bring that up as something to look out for guys. But now, moving forward, a couple of years later, I'm extremely good at vetting. It's just like a cinch. I can spot it a mile away. There's plenty of fish in the sea. That aspect. So I've learned from that, and it's been a valuable experience in that sense. I got away without kids and or charges or anything else. But looking forward, how do you guys? One thing in the pickup community, and the self-development community, one aspect I've never heard talked about is when you're dating multiple women, or even just with one woman, or you don't want to be fully committed. How do you engage, really engagingly, have that romantic type of, good sexual chemistry, when the natural progression for women is to assume some sort of long-term relationship? How do you deal with that bridge between, hey, I'm not giving you commitment here, but I like your company? How do you date 3 or 4 women and not be a player as such, but do that?
Well, I mean, if you're dating for a few months, like less than 6 months, less than a year or something like that, the conversation piece shouldn't even be engaged. It's usually implied by your actions. So if she's like, hey, like, where do we stand? I'd like to be exclusive with you. Say, hey, I'm really enjoying my time with you. Taking it easy right now. That's it. You don't have to explain yourself. I mean, like I said earlier, let the cream rise to the top and let the riffraff kind of fall off, sort of thing. far too many guys in my estimation. I'm going to stop talking in a minute because I've kind of monopolized this call. I want Sean to hop in here, but far too many guys will meet a girl, become exclusive with her, and not give himself an opportunity to see contrast between her and other women, or an opportunity to see who they really are. It's like they'll just jump straight into it. It's like they're serial monogamous. And when you see yourself as the prize, when you see yourself as the man of purpose, chasing excellence with a vision, sort of thing, you'll be spoiled for choice, right? Like, women will want to be with you, men will want to be around you, and you'll be the one that will that will ultimately decide who you're going to let into your inner circle. Like, our inner circle will usually comprise of you and the chick that you're with, sort of thing. Outside of that, you might be in a space where you don't have an inner circle, but you're kind of spinning plates, and you kind of let the cream rise to the top, sort of stuff, right? But I mean, if you're talking like within the first 6 to 12 months, it's not even a question. It's like you don't even get into that conversation. She should respect you and your space, and the man of purpose that you are, based on what you're doing, the excellence that you chase. If the question comes up and she tries to get you exclusive within the first 3 months, then it's like, she's not the chick for you, man. She's trying to lock you down too quick. She's not giving you an opportunity to see what she's all about, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Sean?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I got a comment and a question. The comment is, the way you spin plates is, and we've talked about this before. I'm all for honesty. You let them know what's going on. You don't need to let them know the details, but you be honest about where you are in life. But the first step, I think, for you, Jimbo, is you don't ask that question, how do I spin plates? Because if you do what Rich says and you view yourself as the prize to be won, then you don't need to ask questions like that. So there's a little bit of vulnerability I see in that question right there. You just asking that's displaying your approach to the world is, why I kind of need to answer to women. And no, you don't need to answer to anybody. If you get into a long-term relationship, then you start negotiating things, but you don't owe anybody any explanation. So drop that question. But the question I was going to ask you, Jimbo, is I really appreciate you telling your story. If for the edification of other guys out there, what do you think was the first red flag that you missed in retrospect?
Oh, that's interesting one that I missed. My first girlfriend was similar. So I met this chick when I was like a few years ago, 36. She was 38. And I almost instantly recognized that she was a bit dangerous. She was a box of matches that I shouldn't have been playing with. So I guess I didn't miss too many red flags, but I downplayed them. It was like
you talked yourself out of it.
Ignoring lights on the dashboard and just going, yeah, fuck it. I got no fuel, but I'll make it into town, and just coasting. Turn the radio off and the aircon and just coasted in. I kind of knew, but she was so seductive. I guess I talked myself into it.
I'm coming to think that that's as big a problem. Talking yourself out of red flags is as big a problem for guys as not seeing the red flags. Maybe it's a bigger problem, because I hear so many guys saying what you just said is like I knew what was going on, but I talked myself out of it.
I kind of, again, I had this thing of I can handle it. And because I can see the red flags, that somehow makes me aware and I'll be okay. And the fact that I can still negotiate around it was giving me a sense of ego boost. I had just started coming into after like 35 years of just the blue pill, coming into the pickup community, sort of social dynamic stuff, and starting to use this stuff. And it kind of was working on her. And so I thought I was in control, but
See, this is where the whole pickup community gets it wrong, in my estimation. The whole like real social dynamics, follow this guy, that guy, and regurgitate these lines is it teaches you how to build the confidence to make the approach. It teaches you how to get the date and get the number, but it doesn't teach you the grander scope of making yourself, the prize, the priority, the mental point of origin, whatever it is that you want to call it, while you're chasing your purpose and your excellence. Stop regurgitating memorized lines and, approaches with women, and focus more on who it is that you are, that you want to build, for your life. Like you said, you're in your 30s right now, right?
Yeah, I just went 40. So
40. Okay. So what do you do for a living?
I have a cleaning business.
Okay. So you're an entrepreneur.
Construction cleaning.
Okay. And how's that going for you? Is it growing? Is it contracting? Like, where's that going?
Very stagnant.
Okay.
I'm in one of those, I don't know, maybe if it's midlife crisis or whatever it is. I'm really trying to bunker down and find some direction and purpose right now. It's sort of the thing that is lacking.
So those are the questions that I'd be
really
asking right
fading at
now.
the moment.
Jim, those are the questions that I'd be asking right now. Those are the things that I'd be focusing on right now is how do I create that next chapter of my life? How do I create Jimbo version 2.0 now that I'm at 40 sort of thing, and focus less on, the crazy bitches that were strippers, before, that called the cops on you and manufactured indignation. Because that's where you're going to put your dent in the universe. Like that's where you're going to create your own purpose, right?
Yeah. Well, that was kind of, so moving forward, like I'm kind of off the dating scene currently, but I know that I don't want to be off it for too long. I like the interaction with women. So how do that was my thing, is to how to do that in a way that, because hey, you get a bit gun shy when you get one like that and realize how close you were to danger and how seductive and how great it felt. Like you just think, shit, how do I approach this more rationally now? And so, you guys have given some good answers.
So Jimbo, here's a experiment you could try, that if you focus on this Jimbo 2.0 strategy and you start dressing better and you start looking better and you start being excellent in your business and you're acting as if you are the prize to be pursued, maybe you just pay attention to what happens in your social circle and what kind of women start showing up. But in America here, we think every guy from Australia is Crocodile Dundee, but you actually are kind of Crocodile Dundee. You like to wrestle with the crocodiles a little bit, and maybe that part of your life is behind you now.
Yeah, man, she was a beast. I brought her down, but turns out she got me instead. I'm still living.
Yeah, you're never going to win. And, with somebody like that, they want you to get down and get dirty, and it makes them happy. That's what they like. You're going to start wrestling with a crocodile. It's going to win when you get down on the ground because it's in its element. So you just don't engage in those sort of, like, why would you get yourself in a scenario where the outcome is just not going to be good? The probability of it ending well is so low that it's just a waste of your time, right? I mean, like, you got to be able to identify these things, right?
Absolutely. And like I said, blue pill up till 35, and then this kind of happened right bang as I started to, feel like I could have some choice rather than go with the flow when it comes to women. Who shows up and who wants to stick around type of, social.
Where do you
narrative.
live? Are you in a big city?
Yeah, man, Gold Coast. So
okay.
I mean, I lived in Byron Bay for a while. So I mean, meeting and hooking up with women, it's not too much of a problem for me. That's why, moving forward, it's sort of like, how do I do that in a way that's not consuming my time or risking me? They're so seductive, man. They really. Well, it's easy to get pulled in.
I mean, like, you could start by vetting them or vetting the red flags even on dating apps. Like, if you pay attention to what they say and the pictures they post, you can save yourself a hell of a lot of time going out with degenerates, losers, feminists. You can fill in the blanks of all those things. It's like, you just see it. It's like
they tell you a lot without saying anything.
A picture says 1,000 words, man. Just pay attention, right? Like, you see that chick that has a picture and she's got 72 emojis and she's holding a tiny little dog wearing a sweater with a t-shirt that says, crazy only on Saturdays and Sundays. Skip it. Who cares how cute she is, right? Or if you want to roll around in the mud with a crocodile, just put on a crocodile protection suit and make sure that you don't go out with her 3 times or marry her or wife her up or live with her or anything like that. Have your fun if you need to, if that's what it is you got to do because you like living a life of danger.
No, man, I'm cured from that danger. Once you get that burnt by the fire, like, it's a lesson that it just stays with you. All
right. Well, appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man.
Crocodile Dundee.
Thanks, Jimbo.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Hey, Rich, I like what you just did. You used the word degenerate in relation to women, and I'd never done that before because it seems like degenerate is an adjective that's reserved for guys. I don't think it gets used enough for the fairer sex when they're acting wrong.
Well, for the fairer sex. I mean, honestly, if you're taking off your clothes for money, give me a break.
Yeah.
As Revan, I can't pronounce your name. As Revenue, you can unmute yourself. You have a question? Or 7841.
Well, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
All right. Thank you for having me. My question here is, what effects do violent mothers have on their sons and their future relationships with women?
Oh, that's a good question. You have an answer to that one? I mean, I got some ideas, Sean.
Yeah, violent mothers. Mothers are usually when they get ugly, they usually do it psychologically. Like it's usually the fathers that when they get abusive, they'll say I'll hurt your body, but mothers usually say I'll hurt your soul for the rest of your life. But you have somebody that was actually getting violent with you.
Yes, like physical violence and also psychological, I guess. In the long run, when I was older, it was more psychological. But when we were young, me and my brothers used to get, pretty severe beatings, not just, a
Where was your
spanking.
dad?
Our dad was living abroad at the time.
Okay. And what's your background like on your mom's side?
We're African, we're Nigerian, and we live in Canada. We've been living in Canada for 20 years or so.
Yeah. And was that like a cultural norm? Like, are African mothers, I mean, like I know that things like machetes are pretty popular over there, but like that obviously wasn't the weapon. Like, what are we talking about here? Shoes?
It's more like sometimes she would take like back in the day, like the radio, you could unplug like the back and like the outlets, so she would just like fold it and use like as a switch to beat us with it and things like that. And like, so it wasn't just like a spanking, but so there was all kinds of weapons, whatever weapons you could find, brooms in the house, things like that. So that's what I'm wondering is, I don't know, I can't tell just how severe it is because I don't have a reference point, just how bad beatings get. Is that violent enough to, affect me in a negative way in the future with women? Or is that just like something you can get over pretty easily? You see what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, do you like being with violent women?
No, I don't. That's the thing. Like because of that, if I'm with a woman, she just like, even like just speaks to me in like in the wrong tone, I'm like, yo, I'm not doing this. Like I have a zero tolerance policy with that. So that's not affecting me like negatively. Like I'm not violent myself, but I'm just wondering like.
But I mean, you've identified your boundaries at least now. So you know when somebody crosses your bottom line, like if they're going to be violent or they start behaving in a way that you recognize that might potentially be violent from your experience with your mom, that you're like, okay, this is not cool. We're not doing this.
Yes, for sure.
Got it. Just kind of a question on
or maybe, can I say something?
Yeah, but I just want to ask you real quick, like on an aside, like why was your father living in a different country? Like why was he abroad? Was it because your mom was violent or was it like, because something else?
Just for work. He couldn't find work in Canada, so he was better off to just go back home and work there and just send money back. So it was kind of like a compromise.
Okay.
Just because of the circumstances. So they were still married and things like that. But I'm 27 now. I left home when I was 20, so living on my own. So I haven't been really having to deal with the family life except maybe holidays. But I'm just wondering, could it have some bad effects that I'm not even foreseeing myself? Or maybe I might end up being attracted to even just difficult women because I was around a difficult mother, even though I have boundaries, but it's like, I still end up with a difficult girl. Like I would be attracted to a difficult girl. And then when she brings out the bullshit, I'm like, no, but it's still like the same vicious cycle. It's like, I said
there's
my boundaries.
there's a lot of people that say that that you end up getting in relationships or marrying some version of one of your parents. But I mean, if you're aware of it and you notice the bad behavior, then why would you put up with it, right? What do you think, Sean?
I think you're asking a really good question there because you're asking the question, what do I not know about this situation? And that's really smart because what happens when somebody grows up being abused like that is that their mindset when they're a kid is on survival. And so kids will come up with these ways of getting around the problems or dealing with the problems or trying to prevent the problems. And then that becomes their world is just, how do I get through the day? When a kid shouldn't be worrying about that. A kid should be worrying about developing other skills. Kids shouldn't be worrying about anything. It should be just be developing other skills. The parents should be teaching them other things. And so this question that you're asking, what did I miss developmentally? I'm rephrasing your question. That's a really smart question. And I think maybe you go and you just check in with a psychologist a couple times just to see if you can narrow down that question a little further for yourself, because there probably was some stuff that you missed out on. And you seem like a really insightful guy. So I don't predict that you're going to marry your mother. I predict that you're going to go in the opposite direction and you're going to not make the mistake that your father made, and you're going to make some better decisions. But your question about what do I not know is a brilliant question.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, man. Thanks for hopping on. All right. Let's eject. We're good. We're almost coming up on 90 minutes, Sean. So I think rather than taking any more inbounds, maybe we'll just kind of close out with some final thoughts on violent women. I mean, like there's been some people that have shared some pretty scary stories tonight.
Yeah, you just don't want to get caught in the situation. I think the big theme for the night is like you got to catch those early warning signs, because they're not going to get better usually unless somebody's actively working on it to make it better. It's not going to improve. It's just going to get worse. And so you see those early signs, and imagine what it's going to look like a year down the road, 5 years down the road. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, like everyone's always on their best behavior. You usually end up dating the representative, and then the representative leaves once you've gotten into a committed long-term relationship or marriage, and then you see, what the real person's like. So, the representative is certainly going to send you some signals and ideas of what the real person's like. So pay attention, see how they treat people, see how, their temper and their tolerances and traffic. When you take a trip with them, see what they're like for that week. It's pretty hard to hide bad behavior if you're present for several days straight, and don't ignore it, and don't let the great sex, drown out the bad behavior, because the great sex won't always be around, but the bad behavior is just going to get worse, right?
Yes, it's not going to get better. And there's this mindset that people get into when they're just losing their noodle. And since we're talking about women, I'll say women can get into this mindset. And it's a really hard thing to wrap your head around. And I wonder if it's one of the reasons that guys tend to ignore some of those warning signs, like the guy that called his girl threw a glass at a bar and just had a meltdown in public. And it's hard to wrap your head around being in that mind space where you just have no control over your behavior, and you can't break off your need to engage somebody in conflict. And if you're a rational, level-headed person, I think that's an easy thing to ignore in somebody else because you can't understand it.
Yeah. What's interesting? Let me just tell the full story about the chick that threw the log, through the window, because I kind of opened that, at the start of the broadcast. And this was like, if you pay attention to these crazy chicks when they're talking, especially on the first or second date, they're going to reveal things about themselves. I'm having a conversation, and she says, and out of nowhere, she says to me, have you ever been in a cop car before? And I'm sitting there, and I'm about to answer and say no. And then I'm starting to realize, as I'm coming up with saying no, I'm like, wait, have you ever been in the back of a cop car before? Sure enough, she's in the back of the cop car, which leads from one thing to the other, which tells me the story about her spazzing out on her ex-boyfriend and throwing a log through the front window of his house at 3 o'clock in the morning. If you pay attention to what women say and do, and you're looking for red flags, I mean, if you're looking at their boobs, you're not going to be paying attention, for red flags. And it's fine. Like I love the female form as well, too. Great. Awesome. But pay attention to other things as well, aside from, oh, let me see how quickly I can get in her pants tonight, sort of thing. There's things going on around there. And it's like Sean says in the back of your book, the right woman can change your life. The wrong woman can destroy it. Something along that line.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Like really, guys, honestly, like she will tell on herself. She really will. All right. Yeah, it was a good show. So next week you're off?
Yeah. So I can be back in 2 weeks. I would like to be back in 2 weeks. So does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm going to do next Monday. I might bring on a special co-host, or maybe I'll just fly like a solo show. So we'll see Sean on, what is it? February, March 11th. So I'll see you guys next Monday on the 4th. Want to make sure I get Sean's YouTube channel linked in here in the chat. If you're not following him, make sure you do so. He's putting out good content. And if you need coaching for one-on-one, I'm going to do some copy and pasting here and do some self promotion. Coaching one-on-one, clarity.fm/Richard Cooper. It's billed by the minute. You can also reach Sean in Denver if you want to book him for a counseling session. Just look up Sean T. Smith in Denver, Colorado. And last but not least, my men's community. You can also take a look at joining that if you want to get into a top shelf space for men looking to build a tribe. I'm also doing a broadcast, by the way, for dads that are out there. that are either considering to leave their marriage because it's too brutal and they want to know how to minimize the exit. If they're going through it, I can show you how to get through it without losing the farm, and post-divorce stuff like coping mechanisms for co-parenting. So I'm doing that on my men's community on March 13th. If you want to get in on that, it'll be a really good discussion. Probably do that for like 90 minutes on a Zoom hangout. Sean, thanks for joining me tonight, man.
Yeah, good to see you, Rich.
We'll catch up with you guys next Monday for episode 9 of Before the Train Wreck. Catch you guys later.